All right, man, peace. So, over the past couple of weeks, one of the most controversial and spoken about stories in the sports world has been the California quote unquote Fair Pay to Play Act, which was a bill that was written by Miss Nancy Skinner as well as masterminded by her, at least overtly. We know that behind the scenes, she worked along with the corporatocracy to get this bill going. And it seemingly was co opted by the governor of California by the name of Gavin Newsom. And there's very little doubt in my mind that he is working along with the corporatocracy as well to keep everything going. The way that I know this is because LeBron James on his Instagram a couple of months ago, when the bill was first getting talked about as possibly being ratified, he did a story on his Instagram in which he stated that everyone in California must go out there and write their name down on the petition to hopefully get this bill passed. So it was very clear to me that LeBron James has some inside information on the importance of this bill and how it related to him. Because LeBron James is a businessman, contrary to how he tries to project himself. He claims that he's Muhammad Ali and others of that ilk who are willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good. LeBron has never been about that. He's always been a businessman, and I don't begrudge him that because he is a capitalist. This is a corporate world that we live in. America is just another branch of the global corporation. It is what it is. What I don't like is how he tries to market himself, especially in concert with the Nike modality of lying about what they're about and what their athletes are about. If you were more honest about who you were as a person, then I would have more respect for LeBron James's get up. And when I say get up, I mean how he chooses to make his money off the basketball floor. But since he has decided that he's going to abduct a certain archetype for himself that's not true to who he actually is, then I have to stay on him because he's trying to reap the benefits that those in the past have actually had to work for. LeBron has not had to work for this notion that he's some type of revolutionary. He's basically just playing a part. Nike is working alongside of him, and many strategically placed figures in the political sphere as well as the entertainment world to make LeBron out to be somebody that he's not. And now this new Fair Pay to Play Act is just going to be another chip in LeBron James' bag to try to help him amplify his portfolio as a societal changer. And nothing could be further from the truth. As we're going to find out here, as we listen to Mr. Jason Whitlock, Mr. Marcellus Wiley, and company, there is much more to the Fair Pay to Play Act than meets the eye. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
All right, welcome back to Speak for Yourself, the most fearless show in sports. Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley, joined again by former NFL offensive lineman Jeff Schwartz. All right, let's move to the NCAA and the California Fair Pay to Play Act. The law Governor Gavin Newsom signed earlier this week on the set of LeBron James' HBO TV show, The Shop.
That right there should have let everyone know that this was a corporate maneuver. What governor goes on a TV show in order to sign a bill into an act or to try to sign it into law that's going to be operational in 3 years, unless the television show that he's a part of understood what it was truly about the whole time? As we all know, LeBron James is a Nike asset. That's all he is, and that's really all he chooses or wants to be because he knows that he's going to end up a billionaire just by working with Nike alone, not even factoring in his ventures in the entertainment sphere and his other sponsorships, etc.
The law gives California college athletes the freedom to profit from their likeness and image.
Now, for you brothers out there who think that LeBron James is quote-unquote pro-black, this is what he's actually about right here, and this is what he's always been about. And this is why I tell you cats that a lot of these wokey-wokes, especially in the entertainment industry, they're not so-called pro-black. They just use the pro-black card to get you comfortable with them because that's a new way to market themselves. Being pro-black is a marketing and advertising strategy now. That's not how it was 20 or 30 years ago. So what this does is it allows LeBron James to look back at people like Michael Jordan and other athletes who actually set the stage for him and try to demean and denigrate them in contrast to what he alleges to be today. But look at this right here. This is what the wokey-wokes are actually really about, the liberal blacks in the entertainment industry. Arm in arm with the super liberal Caucasians. By the way, Gavin Newsom, he was able to start a wine business because he's family friends with the Gettys. For those of you who don't know who the Gettys are, they're multi-billionaire oil tycoons. The Getty who finally inherited the oil business actually wanted to go into the music world. So he sold most of his rights to his father's company, but now, of course, he's still a billionaire. He he was able to go into business with this person right here, Gavin Newsom, who tries to act as if he's standing up for the people who don't have any power. The super liberal Caucasian in the lower left-hand corner is Nancy Skinner. She's from the Bay Area, of course. They're the epicenter of quote-unquote white guilt. She claims to have been a huge fan of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as a child. And as I've already stated, she's the person who's been given credit for writing the Fair Pay to Play bill that recently has become an act and eventually will become an operational law in 3 years. So we'll see where this goes. In the lower right, you see that little gymnast that they've been making such a huge deal of over the last year. And if you see the performance that the super liberal woke media is trying to laud her for, it's nothing against her, but it looked like a stripper doing flips. That's all that shit was to me. She looked like a straight up stripper doing flips. That's all that was. And I believe that she actually won the Performance of the Year at the ESPYs. And this was her in a category with real athletes that actually had to compete against one another. Once again, go back and look at her performance. I cannot quite remember what her name is, but she also attended a university in California. And when you watch her performance, it looks like an old burlesque show. And then, of course, you have Diana Taurasi, one of the WNBA lesbians that the NBA is trying to push. You'll notice that many of the NBA's top stars have been making appearances at WNBA playoff games and now in the finals. It's very obvious that they're getting paid to do so. So once again, that's what the super liberal / woke Negroes in the entertainment industry are about. They're Luciferians behind closed doors, believe it or not. At least many of those in the know, they're attending the same witch covens. They're attending the same Luciferian meetings to get further into the Bacchanalian or Osirian mystery school system. Once again, believe it or not. Am I saying that everyone here is down with that program? No. I don't think that Ed O'Bannon is there. I just think he was invited to this episode because he was one of the original NCAA stars from the mid-1990s who started to make a big deal of the fact that his likeness and his image was being used and he was not reaping the benefits from it. So that's why he was invited. But most of these other people that you see right here, they're Luciferians. The little stripper gymnast in the bottom right, no. But the rest of them, yes. Allegedly. Allegedly. But it's very clear that's what they're about.
Endorsement, sponsorships, and merchandise sales. Things that are all prohibited by the NCAA rules. Yesterday, I stated on this show that the law's intention is to emancipate shoe company executives, not college athletes, and maintain the status quo. The so-called Adidas investigation and trials that made felons out of shoe executives and college basketball assistant coaches are the real impetus behind the Fair Pay to Play Act. The implementation of the law frees Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, and the rest to legally repackage the money they traditionally illegally funnel to top college athletes. Instead of direct cash payments to parents, uncles, AAU coaches, and assistant coaches, the shoe companies can now strike endorsement deals for t-shirt sales and whatnot using the likeness of high-profile athletes.
And of course, they can also try to dig their claws into the flesh of athletes when they're in high school. Of course, they can start negotiating with them from at that point as opposed to when they're leaving college, or at least overtly when they're leaving college.
But the new law did include a key restriction. If a school has a shoe deal in place with a shoe company, the athlete can't strike a deal with a competitor.
Of course, because that's what it's always been about. These shoe companies and these sports apparel businesses, they want in on the billions of dollars that the NCAA has been stacking in its coffers for a very long time. And what they've been trying to explain to the NCAA is that we don't necessarily want your money per se. We just want to open up revenue generating avenues for ourselves with these kids. We're not trying to take away money from you, but what the NCAA is trying to communicate with the sports apparel businesses is that we're making a lot of money with a lot of private corporations and with a lot of local businesses having these kids make appearances, things of that nature, and that is going to cut into our revenue a little bit. Of course, it's going to be negligible, but the NCAA wants every penny that it can get. So they're really arguing over who's going to be able to pimp these kids out better. Of course, the sports apparel companies have the quote-unquote moral as well as financial high ground because at least they're promising to pay the quote-unquote student athletes something.
But the athlete, he's free. No, he's not. That's why I call this Jim Crow, not Abe Lincoln.
Well, I think that it's a bit dangerous to liken what's going on here with the Fair Pay to Play Act with Jim Crow. If people are going to bristle at the notion of being a professional sports star or going to school and playing a sport to slavery or to a plantation, as many people bristle at that notion, let's not call the possibility of these athletes being reimbursed or having endorsement deals set up for them by apparel companies as Jim Crow, because that's not really accurate.
It's about protecting shoe companies, not liberating athletes.
Well, it's not really about protecting shoe companies. It's about allowing shoe companies to sink their fangs into the necks of the most prominent collegiate athletes as early as possible.
About damaging NCAA mandated amateurism. It's redefining the status quo and selling it to the public as freedom. LeBron James is the mascot for all of it.
LeBron James has always been a mascot. He's the modern day Magic Johnson. If Magic Johnson were playing basketball today, he would be LeBron James. He'd be that person who was speaking to Nike or Reebok or Adidas and asking them, what do you want me to say next? What do you want me to do next? That's who LeBron James is, believe it or not. And that's who he has his highest level of allegiance to, is Nike. I've been explaining this to you, brothers, for the last 2+ years, and many of you are finally starting to see it.
Newsom and Nike use LeBron to convince college athletes and sports fans that significant progress has been made. This law is more agent of chaos than solution for the NCAA's outdated model of amateurism.
Well, it definitely is an agent of chaos mechanism, but sometimes you need someone who's going to create entropy to force higher institutions to do something that they should have done for a very long time. Now, am I in favor of an open market when it comes to paying collegiate players? No, I am not, because I think that's going to create even more chaos and anarchy than anything else. Certain people might not like this, but I do believe that there may need to be an element of socialism/Marxism in college when it comes to reimbursing these student athletes. I think that they should all be receiving an equal stipend every week, whether it's $800, $1,000 a week for every individual athlete. Why is that? Because why would you promise a 5-star recruit out of high school that they're going to receive $1 million a year when you have no idea who they're going to be, and they're only going to be at your institution for 1 or 2 years? You don't even have the opportunity to figure out how great they are. What if you bring them onto your campus and other kids onto your campus, and you've already promised John Smith that he's going to receive $1.5 million as a freshman, but you have other freshmen coming in, and one of them is better than him, but you promise him that you can only pay him $75,000. Now what? Now he's going to say, okay, I'm leaving and I'm going to transfer to this other school because you're paying this guy way more than me, and I'm better than him, and you can see it here on the practice floor. It's going to create a lot of problems that we don't need. And of course, it's going to lead to a trickle-down effect in high school. I do believe that there has to be a barrier created at some point. We're just going to have an open capitalistic market all the way into junior high school and then elementary school. It just makes no sense whatsoever.
Not a step in the right direction for college basketball, college football, or the professional leagues they support. It's going to provoke other states to enact their own set of unique laws. We live in this era where social media and the Hollywood culture push us to embrace chaos and tear down every American institution.
At the end of the day, the NCAA has had a monopoly for a very long time, a multi-billion-dollar monopoly, and they are going to get toppled due to this strategy right here. It is going to work.
It's a mistake. College athletics should be reformed by experts within the industry, not destroyed by politicians looking to build a brand.
Politicians who are also being reimbursed, there's very little doubt about that. Money talks. It's always what talks. And in the same way that they have pushed and propagated the notion that they're legalizing weed in all 50 states for the betterment of the citizens of the United States and to give people other options when it comes to how they can heal themselves or treat their ailments, when in all actuality it's very clear that those politicians have been promised that they're going to be the recipients of certain taxes from the sales of marijuana. It's also very obvious that these wokey-woke politicians have been told by the sports apparel companies that there's a big fat check in it for you too.
Newsom and Nancy Skinner, the California state senator who sponsored the Fair Pay to Play Act, are a couple of Northern California activists who don't have the best interests of athletes or athletics in mind.
Well, as we know, all an activist is a big mouth with no plan.
Promoters of institutional chaos, just because Nike told LeBron to fall for their okie doke doesn't mean you have to.
Well, LeBron didn't really fall for the okie doke. LeBron just follows orders. LeBron is a very highly paid pawn and a happy pawn. That's why he's always got that goofy looking smile on his face.
I want to end NCAA amateurism. There are far smarter ways to do it than the Fair Pay to Play Act. All right, guys, Marcellus, get us rolling here. Think the Fair Pay to Play Act causes more chaos than solutions.
Yes, it does. But chaos in this situation is going to be necessary in order to topple the monopoly known as the NCAA. The question is going to be, after the NCAA has been toppled, who has the plan that's going to be able to recreate the college sports business model in a way that's going to be equitable for everyone involved? Because there is going to be politics there. You're going to have the women's sports that are going to be chiming in claiming that they want to be paid quote-unquote equally. That's why I state that the only real solution is to give a stipend to all of the college athletes that is the same amount. I'm sure that it's not going to sound good to many people, but that is how you're going to avoid a lot of long-term vitriol and acrimony that's unnecessary, especially for people who are not receiving anything at least above the table right now. You give everyone an equal stipend from the NCAA, and then you allow them to negotiate whatever deals for appearances and likenesses that they can with some of these private corporations, and leave it at that. But this notion that 5-star recruits or top-level recruits from high school should be getting paid $3-4 million a year, no, that's ludicrous. And that's going to lead to a lot of problems on campus, in the locker room, etc., that you don't want to have to deal with.
If I had to lean one way, I would say chaos in this respect. A lot of moving parts here, so therefore...
Agreed.
There will be a lot of unintended consequences, good ones and bad ones. Is this a baby step towards the end goal, or is this a huge leap towards the end goal?
This is a huge cataclysmic initial first step.
Unfortunately, I think that's already been lost. Pay the athletes was the end goal. And this is a switcheroo and distraction from that. Giving only the top college players a chance at endorsement likeness dollars is a true distraction from what the intended goal were to pay all the athletes. So,
right, well, that's why Whitlock has already stated that this is a strategy that's being used by the top sports apparel companies so that they can get some of the top players and athletes in college all to themselves, because that's all they're concerned about. Adidas and Nike are not concerned about the 12th man on the bench. They're worried about the next Zion Williamsons. They want to, once again, they want to sink their fangs into those players, those athletes' necks as young as possible, because the younger you get them, the more money you can make.
We've already had a misstep or a baby step in that direction. What are these unintended consequences? Two jump to mind. One, in the locker room. So now I'm on a team with Trevor Lawrence. I'm at Clemson. He's big time. He's going to get his money. But these rosters are 100 deep. A lot of walk-ons. A lot of guys sitting there and say, hey, man, you're a 4-star. You're playing before me. But I deserve an opportunity. Therefore, I deserve opportunity at the money that we get from our likeness.
Absolutely. And beyond that, once again, do not underestimate the power of envy. As Marcellus Wiley has already stated, you have 100 kids on these football teams, and they come from various backgrounds. You're going to tell me that you're only going to allow 2 or 3 guys on each team to be the recipients of $1 million endorsement deals, and you think that those players are not going to have bodyguards and security and protection just like professional athletes do? You damn right they do. You damn right they're going to need that level of protection, because believe me, there are people who end up in college or at universities who come from very seedy backgrounds. And once they find out how much money so-and-so is making, they will not hesitate, especially if they find out that they're not going to get any playing time, which means that their professional football or professional basketball dream is not going to come to fruition. Okay, no problem. I know where I can get some money from. I can get some money from this quarterback right here. I can get some money from this shooting guard right here, who's making all the commercials and has all the girls and is driving around campus in a damn Lamborghini. Oh no, he gonna come up off something. He gonna come up off that chain. He gonna come up off that wallet. He gonna come up off something. So, do not be surprised if that type of shit starts to happen.
Is that opportunity going to be granted? So there's going to be infighting just at the professional level, but now with less mature players, 18 to 21, 22 years old. Two, the businesses in the community, especially local businesses, B2C level, are going to be able to directly go to that athlete and pay him, which is tremendous. But then the school is going to get left out of that. I used to be in the school program. I used to be on the school screen during the games. Now I'm going directly to you, Trevor Lawrence. The school is sitting there saying, wait a minute, that's a bottom line issue that is affecting our pockets. So where's that resentment going to lie? Are they just going to throw up their hands and say new status quo? Or are they going to push back?
They're definitely going to push back, and they're going to push back in the form of far higher level scrutiny. The NCAA is not going to take this lying down. They don't like the possibility of losing any pennies anywhere. And if that means that they have to have private detectives following around some of these high-profile athletes to find out if they're infracting on any of the other NCAA rules that could cause them to lose eligibility, that's what they're going to do. If it means that they may have to bring certain sanctions against sports apparel companies or dime them out, maybe contact the FBI, etc., to see if there's anything going on that could cause litigations against many of these sports apparel companies, that's what they're going to try. Because even though we're making money together, does not mean that you have the right to try to muscle in on what's going on in my backyard.
Questions and more need to be answered before I can say this is a true solution.
Well, for the California law, I know there's other states that are working on laws. We have 3.5 years to figure that out. This is not going to affect until January of 2023. By then, we'll have other states that probably jump the line. We'll have litigation to figure out how to do this. I do think, to your point, there will be regulations put in place. This has to be out in the open. It cannot be under the table anymore, even though it could be legal under the table. I think it has to be out in the open. And what you brought up, they're valid concerns. But we need to go to a system that just allows players to have a little extra money in their pockets based off their image, name, and likeness. I don't think paying players per se is the way to go. This is why this is a great start to this. I think we've overestimated how this is going to reach. If you look at a football team with 85 scholarship guys, how many guys are truly going to make 5, 6, 7 figures? Not 7 figures, I don't think. five figures. Probably not very many. There'll be a lot of guys that are able to go home to their hometown touchdown club and speak for $1,000. There'll be guys be able to go get a free lunch on campus. I'm watching this show on the 40 Gators today on a behind-the-scenes thing, and Mullen's wife, the head coach, had to call the NCAA to make sure that she could bring a sandwich to a player that just had surgery. Like, that needs to be done, right? We agree on that?
A lot of that is because of so many of the gambling scandals that happened with the NCAA or within the framework of the NCAA from the 1940s through the 1980s. Like, there are a lot of gambling scandals that we've heard about or know about, and a lot more that we have not heard about. So that's what they're really concerned with. In their mind, they have to make sure that the competition integrity is on the up and up, and they don't want the people who are betting on the games to believe that, well, this person has an endorsement with this private company, and the owner of that private company actually graduated from the school that this player is playing against this weekend. Is it possible that they might have their palms greased and not catch that touchdown pass or not make that field goal or something of that nature? That's what they're concerned about.
This is the first step in that process, and we don't know yet how it's going to play out. We all have our ideas. I think yours are valid. I think yours are valid too. That could be the reason behind this, but the start of this is the way to go. We now have 3.5 years, at least in California, to figure it out. Who knows if they'll do it? Who knows if this will be repealed by then? Who knows how the NCAA will react? There are coaches on record now starting to agree with the principle of this.
Well, the coaches are number pimps, so of course they're going to agree. They're like little mini pimps.
But for California alone, we have 3.5 years to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that there are coaches that have figured out, hey, I'm going to jump on board with this because they've heard from their shoe reps and executives, hey, this is good for us or it's good for you.
Absolutely. And beyond that, if you're a coach, you want to appear, especially to any incoming freshmen, that you're liberal. You're in favor of the player being empowered. That's the Popovich technique that he tries to use in the NBA that really has not worked for him, but he still tries it anyway.
Surprise. What disappoints me is athletics are special. And just to be quite honest, I'm going to say this, and people may not like me for it. Football and basketball have been very good to people that look like me.
Yeah.
That's very true, Jason Whitlock, but I have news for you. Football and basketball have been the beneficiaries of the greatness of the black man, even more than they've helped the so-called black man. And I've stated this ad infinitum on this channel. For some reason, black men love to give the NFL and the NBA so much credit for welcoming them in, when in all actuality, it's very clear that with the black man representing just 7 to 8% of the U.S. population, and yet representing 75% of the NBA and 70+% of the NFL, it's very clear that both of those sports leagues recognize something special in the so-called black man that they do not see in any other race of men. So we have to stop giving so much credit to the NBA and the NFL as if they're just bringing black men in out of the kindness of their heart. No, that's not how it works. If they could find a white guy who could do what Michael Jordan did, that's who they would go to. If they could find a white boy who could run like Walter Payton, that's who they would market. Believe me, that's why every once in a while when you see a Caucasian athlete or someone of another race enter into the NBA or the NFL, they make such a huge deal. Remember Jeremy Lin? They're making Jeremy Lin out to be, they were really comparing him to Magic Johnson during that streak of quote-unquote Linsanity. And you got to see the real spirit within people when Jeremy Lin was playing how he was playing for that 8 or 9 game stretch. Because even though it's buried, the other races have a great deal of resentment at the so-called black man's athletic and entertainment prowess. They're forced to give him credit for something that they wish that they didn't have to give him credit for, because at the end of the day, even though sports and entertainment is folly, it creates a great deal of charisma around the so-called black man that they resent. Because at the end of the day, if you're a Caucasian man or an Asian man or an East Indian man or an Arab man, and you walk into your daughter's room and you see a poster of Chris Brown on the wall, when you'd rather see a poster of a young man of your own race that your daughter favors, of course that's going to have an impact. When you walk into your son's room and there's a poster of Kobe Bryant or LeBron James or Michael Jordan or Floyd Mayweather on that wall, and you'd rather that he had a poster of someone of his race on that wall, that has an impact.
And when I see people that don't look like me, Nancy Skinner and Gavin Newsom, jump in here and say, I got the solution.
Because they don't have the solution. All they have is the message, because it's the message that was given to them. A politician's job, once again, is not to come up with plans that help people. A politician's job is to take the wants of the people and present them to a larger legislative body. That's his only job or her only job. And if they're not doing that, they get removed. If politicians do not serve the big corporations, they get revealed and they get removed. Period. And that's why I've constantly stated with so-called black people, our race, our so-called race, is the only race that looks to a politician to save us. No other nation of people looks to a politician to save them. When you look at the most successful races in America, the Asians, the Arabs, so on and so forth, they have the lowest voter turnout because they have the strongest culture and they understand what America is about. America is about making money and making sure that your money does not leave your community. Our people did not understand that at all, and there are many reasons for that. Many reasons for that. Number one, the so-called black man has been taken completely out of power. He has no self-confidence in himself to rule and administer anymore. They place the so-called black woman in a position of authority, and the woman, period, is a servant by nature. So once you put the woman in a position of authority, she's going to look around at everything that's going on around her and figure out, how can I survive? Because the woman is a survivor. They're not creators, they're survivors. So the woman will adapt. That means once she sees that the men of her race are no longer in a prominent position, she's going to start to respect the men of the other races more. No matter what they say, no matter what pro-black women say, they love this society and they serve the Caucasian. That's why they embrace feminism. But just to get back to the point, Gavin Newsom and Nancy Skinner, they are vassals of the corporatocracy. They have to be. That is why they put forth this bill that became an act. They're getting reimbursed under the table, allegedly. But I promise you, that's what it is. And that's why you're going to start to see other politicians in other states come up with their own Fair Pay to Play Act. They're not doing this shit out of the kindness of their hearts.
You're not involved in athletics at all. I want some experts. And I don't want LeBron in here after the fact. He ain't got a damn thing to do with this bill.
Well, he has something to do with it. He has something to do with it. His job is to make it look good and to sell it to all the wokety-woke silly Negroes on the internet, which he does a very good job of doing. He's become the patron saint of the pea-brain wokety-woke niggas on the internet. They think this dude is like all that in a Hot Wheel track.
Like he's told him to do. He wasn't part of the formation of it. He never participated in college athletics. I don't need a mascot. I want experts to come in here and fix and remodel college athletics in a way that I still feel confident football and basketball is going to work for me. And
Jason Whitlock, it's not that difficult to figure out. We don't even really need experts. All we need are people who are confident enough to come up with a real plan and push that real plan so that it makes sense for everybody. That's why I state that in my view, if you're going to pay college athletes, you have to pay everybody. And the only way that you can pay everybody is to introduce a certain aspect of socialism/Marxism. Now, in the big picture, does socialism/Marxism work? Absolutely not. But in an economy like college athletics, where you're only expecting athletes to be there for 4 years and only be real contributors for 2 to 3 years, there's nothing wrong with paying everyone the same amount, especially if you can make it tax-free. So if you were to tell all of the quote-unquote college athletes or student athletes that you're going to receive $1,000 a week tax-free, as well as, of course, free room and board, free education, etc., that should be more than enough. And it would also stop a lot of the bickering that would emerge if you decided to just take certain select athletes and pay them $4 million or $3 million a year, and everyone else is just getting pennies. You can't do that. That's going to lead to a very poor paradigm of operations across so many of these NCAA campuses. You don't want that.
To come from my situation. And so, and I think there's some aggressive things that the NFL, the NBA should be doing to support college athletics, football and basketball, because they've been very good to them. I want to see real solutions, not this stopgap measure that was done because James Gatto, for the Adidas executive, got 9 months in prison.
And let me also say this. In addition to the $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 a week, however much they would decide to pay these student athletes, of course, they would also be able to endorse certain products, receive sponsorships, so on and so forth. Whatever it is that they were able to accumulate or gather due to their skill on the court, on the field, or wherever. But that's how you have to do it. You cannot make it an open capitalistic environment for these students. They're only 18 years old, 19 years old. That's going to be too much for them.
And damn it, we got to fix that very quickly to make sure none of these other shoe executives go to jail. I want real solutions to end amateurism and to be fair to these athletics without tearing this down. And again, I think everybody gets so emotional and caught up, and we hate the NCAA, we hate everything. Let's all tear it down. When actually, if you go look at it, and you go back and listen to our A block about these quarterbacks and who's getting paid and all the money that's going into these professional sports, go look at the NBA. This model is working. It needs to be remodeled, not destroyed.
Well, it needs to be recalibrated, I think is what you mean. But I understand what you're saying. You cannot just tear up the whole framework.
Be redefined, certainly. And we all know perfect is the enemy of good. So I'm not looking for a perfect system.
Agreed.
But the step that they took is not the step that I thought was necessary, because it let the schools off the hook.
Right, but it was the step that was expedient. And they meant to let the schools off the hook for now. They want to apply pressure, but indirect pressure, to let the NCAA know that you have competition now. We're a whole other business. Now, these schools, if you decide to kick them out of the NCAA Federation, we'll see how well you fare without USC and UCLA and Cal Berkeley and all these other schools in California. California is major. It's not like it's Iowa or some shit and you're only losing a couple of schools. This is something that the NCAA is going to have to seriously think about and how it's going to impact their future. That's what I mean when I say that even though this was, as Jason Whitlock has stated, chaotic in its attempt to change the overall paradigm or what have you, it's going to be effective. It's going to work because it's going to force the NCAA to enact certain reforms to do things that they probably should have done many years ago.
We're talking about redefining amateurism, and all we're doing is talking about a relationship between companies, shoe companies, local companies, and the athlete on the side. So there's no base salary for any athlete. There's no base. If you want to...
And that's the issue, sir. That's a very intelligent comment by you, Marcellus Wiley. That's why I state, if you look at the corporate world, whatever job it is that you do, you have to understand how much you're supposed to get paid. So, for example, let's say that you are working in some corporate office as an administrative assistant, and you look at the normal base salary for an administrative assistant as $45K or $50K, and the salary range goes from $50K to $80K. That's where you have to work, or that's the range within which you have to work based on your experience and your expertise. They need that in the NCAAs. You just can't have one guy making $500 a week because he's a walk-on, and then you have someone who's a five-star recruit making $4 million a year. That's ridiculous, and that's not a business model that's going to work in the long run.
The education, the base salary, then we're in the same status quo we were before this bill. Governor Newsom, who I respect, who I've met, who I think has his heart in the right place.
Allegedly.
Maybe not the most vested interest and understanding of experience, because this act really put the shoe companies in a powerful position.
That's the point, sir. That's the point. That's how you know that Gavin Newsom must have received a very hefty check. As a matter of fact, when you look up and research the history of this bill, Nancy Skinner at first thought that she was going to be the recipient of some blowback from Gavin Newsom. She was a bit surprised that he decided to go along with it, which tells you what? She didn't know how big this enterprise was. She probably just thought that there was a certain shoe company that was just working with her, not realizing that they had other moles sprinkled throughout the political sphere in California, that they've been working on this for a while.
The school's off the hook, and then the schools are going to recalibrate this new relationship between its athletes and have a response. And I don't think that this act takes that into account.
The problem with the base...
And once again, for LeBron James to have Gavin Newsom and Nancy Skinner on his show, that's how you know he was in on it the whole time. He was being told by Nike that these are a couple of our plants and they're going to be on your next show. Because LeBron doesn't do any damn research. He doesn't know that Nancy Skinner wrote the bill and Gavin Newsom is going to pass it and make it an act. I mean, give me a break.
Of college athletics is you have to spread it around to all the sports, right? You can't just be football or basketball. There'll be plenty of lawsuits around fairness of that, right?
Absolutely.
Is it $2,000 a month? Is it $3,000 a month? The $4,000 a month? Yes, this let the colleges off the hook, but I do think there's going to have to be a compliance involved with the colleges. And there's going to have to be, because you probably have to file taxes on this money.
Ding. That's what I mean when I say there are a lot of provisions that the NCAA is going to have to work on in order for them to create some type of financial package that would make it equitable for them to say, you know, we'll forego the Fair Play to Play Act, go along with what our plan is. So it's going to force them to have to come up with something. But whatever it is going to have to involve something that's feasible. It's not going to be a disparity of a couple $100 for one guy and a couple million for another guy. And then the chicks, the chicks that play water polo, they don't get anything. I mean, come on. There'll be so many protests that, you know, people's heads will explode.
You set that up, college will have to help. Like, there's going to be some, I think, I could be wrong, some regulations put in place between now and January of 2023. I don't know what that's going to be. I don't trust they're going to do it right. I don't think. We'll see when the time comes.
There's another group being let off the hook here, and because I agree with you. These professional leagues that benefit directly from college football and basketball, they need to be part of the solution for college because they've been benefiting greatly from college athletics.
Well, you know what, Whitlock? What would be very interesting since you bring that up, and we know the NBA has already pretty much been exposed due to this storyline involving them in China. For the NBA to get involved in reimbursing college athletes, of course, that would mean that the NBA would have to consider sharing a lot of their revenue with college athletes. How would people like LeBron James and Chris Paul and other wokey-wokes in the NBA respond to the notion that we're going to have to cut your basketball-related income to reimburse these male players in college? How would they deal with that notion? That would be a great litmus test to find out how quote-unquote socially conscious they actually are.
So there's a way to improve football and basketball in America while being economically fair to the kids that are being exploited. And there's the handful of superstars. I don't feel like I needed any more than the education Ball State gave me. My level of value didn't elevate beyond, hey, give me an education. You brought me out of the ghetto, you gave me an education, fair exchange. Let's take care of the guys that drive it, make it healthy. I would love to see something where I've argued on this show, I'd have no problem if Zion Williamson somehow made $3 or $4 million a year while he was at Duke.
Well, we're like a lot of other people would. And that's where the problem would come in. He's a 17-year-old, 18-year-old boy on a college campus, and you're saying that you would have no problem with him making $3 to $4 million a year. Well, a lot of other people would. And that would lead to a lot of problems that he probably would not be ready to face at that point. There's a reason why these professional sports leagues have a rookie wage scale. It's because it's merit-based. You actually have to show that you deserve to make more and more money as your career advances. We just cannot tell top recruits coming out of high school, okay, we're going to give you $3 million to come here. I mean, these guys get drafted into the professionals, and they end up being duds. Imagine someone who gets a guaranteed $3 million a year contract to go play at Duke, and they can't play. That'll be a huge black eye to this entire thing. There's no way in the world that you can do that.
No problem with that. I think it's good for Zion. I think it's good for the NBA. Those are the type of solutions I want to see explored rather than these stopgap measures. Yeah. All right, coming up.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see where this goes, this Fair Pay to Play Act. So peace.